Good afternoon. Thank you for, can you hear me? Good afternoon. Thanks for inviting us here. I don't know if you know, but this space we're in right now is a parking garage. I've never been asked to speak in a parking garage. It's pretty cool. So I'm Adam Malik. This is my colleague, Louise Story. She is a star investigative reporter who wears many hats in our newsroom. She's an MBA and a data whiz, and she also covered the US and European financial crisis. Later on, she'll tell you about a pretty amazing project she's been working on for the past year, which has reporting across 20 different countries. I'm a print reporter by background, and now I work as a senior video correspondent based in Geneva, Switzerland, covering international affairs around the world. In addition to my reporting, part of my role is to rethink how we can attract new audiences, particularly in the developing world. And before I joined the Times, I worked as a freelance reporter in Europe and Southeast Asia for 6 years. So Louise and I were on a team of 10 people who authored the Innovation Report. The document is 96 pages, and it took us 6 months to research and write. In the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to tell you every single thing in the report and tell you every single thing that's happened in the year since it was leaked to the world. Or we'll just summarize it really quickly and then take some questions. So let's start by talking about how fast our industry is changing. This is a snapshot of just some headlines about the media industry during the 6 months in which we researched the Innovation Report. Vox, a new digital media startup, raised $40 million. BuzzFeed, once known for cat videos, not only launched an investigative staff, but they expanded their foreign operations. Business Insider didn't exist when Louise and I joined the Times, and during this period, it surpassed the Wall Street Journal in traffic. These headlines are 18 months old, but they feel ancient to us. You can make a slide like this every 2 months, and you still won't be moving as fast as our industry. But you know who's moving even faster than our industry? It's our readers. This is an example you may have seen, and it evidences how fast things are changing for people. It's from St. Peter's Square in 2005, the funeral of Pope John Paul II. Here is the exact same place 8 years later. It's the first appearance of Pope Francis. And if you look closely in the bottom right corner in 2005, you'll see someone with a flip phone. We call those people early adopters. These user changes filter directly down into our newsrooms. Here's an example of what it looks like. This chart from our Innovation Report generated quite a bit of attention. It's the decline of the almighty homepage. Traffic cut in half from 2011 to 2013. Think about the homepage. It's a diminishing asset because it's a finite amount of space. If you sat in on our news meetings, say a year ago, you would see department heads like sports, Washington, international, competing for space on the homepage. Of course, that's not a net gain for the newsroom. We now live in an era where we can promote and distribute all stories in different platforms. But there's good news. Our digital audience is not shrinking. People are just finding new and different ways to read our journalism. For example, explosive growth on mobile. Mobile page views have doubled from 2011 through 14. This year, 60% of our traffic came from a smartphone or tablet. 60%. Almost half of our audience is mobile only. We need to get used to the fact that the next generation of readers may never pick up a newspaper. But equally important, they may never visit our website either or a desktop. It took the web more or less 20 years to disrupt the news industry, and that felt really fast. And now mobile has done it in just a couple years. But here's the challenge. It's a classic story of disruption. The platform in decline is print, and it still generates most of the revenue. However, the growth is in digital. So our broader challenge is how to transform a 164-year-old newsroom into a digital company. This is a journalistic challenge, it's a cultural challenge, it's a technological challenge, and it's a financial challenge. It's also a really good reason for us to go into public relations tomorrow morning. However, on a serious note, we're gearing up for what we consider to be a very exciting challenge. It's a euphoric time to be a journalist. We have the opportunity to reach so many new readers. Previous generations of journalists could only dream of this opportunity. So to confront these challenges head on, 10 of us came together and produced this report for our top editors. We did it the only way we know how to really do anything, and that's to treat it like a story. We launched an investigation into the Times itself. It is, in its essence, a reported document. The report was fundamentally about two things: audience development and digital-first culture. And we'll break both of those down for you in a minute. But first, as many of you know, the report was meant to be secret. It was leaked to BuzzFeed about a year ago. A report created for 6 people, 6 of our bosses, has since been downloaded 2 million times. And the irony is not lost on us. We're well aware it was our scoop about our company, reported by our journalists, and BuzzFeed brought it to the world. We've since heard of companies from Sweden, Norway, Korea, England, Germany commissioning their own innovation reports. People often ask us, why did this gain so much attention? We think that many newsrooms around the world were surprised that the Times is facing the same challenges. They could relate to what was in it. These challenges are quite universal. How did we do it? We interviewed more than 350 people at 50 companies, and it wasn't just newspapers. It was tech startups and venture capitalists. In fact, one of my favorite interviews with Louise, we interviewed someone at a major credit card company on how they nurture lifetime loyalty among cardholders. Louise and I spent the first few weeks just interviewing users, even shadowing the consumption of habits of news junkies. We invaded their homes as they woke up in their pajamas. It was one of the most creepy moments of my life. And we watched them read the news. One of them was asking us what she would wear as she got dressed that morning. Think about it, all journalists really do is interview sources. How many times have you talked to your readers about how they get their news? It's really simple stuff, but we had never done it before, and it brought some really revolutionary insights. By the end, it became clear to us that no one has solved the media business model. No one has figured out how to save journalism in the digital age. But different players have solved different pieces of the puzzle. BuzzFeed has mastered the art of social sharing. The Financial Times has radically refocused its hiring efforts on digital. And The Guardian has built a cohesive community around its stories. The Times figured out a pay model. We made a bet on our readers, and we decided to make more investments in our journalism while the competition was scaling back. We have a metered paywall, and it's worked quite well for us. We're on track to reach 1 million digital subscribers in the next few months. Because readers pay for our journalism, we're able to avoid the race to the bottom, which is chasing clicks, instead of serious reporting. The bottom of the internet is a very crowded place. But quality journalism alone is never enough, and that brings us to audience development. Digital readership is up by 1/4 over the past year, and it's mostly because of audience development, which is basically the art and science of reaching more readers with our journalism. We've built a large audience team, as the report recommended, with top talent, from everywhere from Upworthy to the Washington Post. We put a new chief of audience development on the masthead, which is our board of the newsroom. And although we've been focused on the long term, we've seen some huge immediate gains. Digital readership, that's up by 1/4. Social referrals, nearly double. And that's in just 6 months. But more importantly, departments and reporters and editors are thinking more actively about their audience. So what is audience development? Well, it's the use of tools and tactics and strategies. It's informed by data and ruled by editorial judgment. And there is no silver bullet with audience development. There are many opportunities to make significant impact by reaching and engaging our audience at their digital doorsteps. Now, stop and think about it. Audience development is actually something news organizations have been doing for a really long time, hundreds of years, in fact. We literally printed out the newspaper every night, loaded them on trucks which drove across America, and then dumped them in the front yards of boys who owned bicycles, who would then put the newspaper onto their bikes and pedal them to the front doorsteps of all of our subscribers. It's an amazing feat of humanity, and it looks like this.
All around the world, home newspaper delivery is an impressive feat. In India, men on bikes can throw a newspaper right into your fifth-floor walk-up.
You're watching extreme newspaper delivery.
And closer to home, the process of home delivery can be a dangerous task.
Yikes. I don't know if you can see this, how crazy this really is. This is just dangerous. All to get to that little guy right there. All to put it in this box right here.
I guess it wasn't very smart of us to show this example of the ice, because everyone here is probably like, that's not even ice. What's that dude complaining about? Anyway, if they can do that, we can certainly handle audience development in the digital age. The big point here is that we need to modernize audience development. We can no longer rely on people finding stories. Our stories have to find people. So it used to be that pressing the publish button was the final step for journalists like us. Sit back and enjoy the impact of our work. But now the story begins when you press the publish button. These are just some of the tools and tactics we have to consider when filing a story. How to use geo-targeting. Should we start email newsletters? How to write headlines on an Apple Watch? What should our commenting platform look like? And how should our Instagram strategy be different than our WeChat strategy? I'm often asked, what does this mean in the real world for real reporters? So I'd like to share with you an example of my work that encompasses some of these changes, many of these changes. Just a few months after the report was published, this is a video that I produced and co-wrote. It's about a man named Ali, and he's the lone survivor of an ISIS massacre that killed hundreds of Iraqis.
هذا أنا متأكد منه 100%، مو بس 100%، مليون بالمية، لأن إحنا هذول مجموعتنا المتشتفين وهذاك الكرفان اللي طالع من عنده شوية.
In June, ISIS militants massacred hundreds of army recruits. This is the improbable story of Ali Kazem, the only known survivor.
So this is the type of journalism that we're most proud of, and I wanted to make sure that it reached everyone who would want to see it. So before hitting the publish button, I, as a journalist, took the lead role in conceiving an audience development strategy to ensure that our journalism would reach the maximum natural audience. So what did we do? We assembled a team across 8 departments that had never previously worked together, like marketing, social, data analytics, and we produced the first ever bilingual video. We created socially native media assets like trailers, images, bilingual copy to spur sharing on social networks. We targeted an international audience in their language, in their time zone, on the social platforms that they use. And we secured pre-launch commitments from non-traditional off-site partners like the Young Turks. We identified and leveraged influencers. These are people with large followings who often chime in on a topic or a region. Now, of course, this required some resources, but the results were off the charts. In 3 days, Survivor blanketed the social web, becoming the most streamed NYT video of the year. Remember my point earlier on the decline of the homepage? Instead of fighting that, we embraced it, and we pushed the video out to people where they hang out online. And as a result, as you can see, 88% of the streams came off-site, only 12 at the Times. And by the way, of that 12%, only 5 came from our homepage. International audiences were more omnipresent, more mobile, and far more likely to be new visitors to our site. As you see, our Arabic tweet referred more streams than our English language tweets. And we learned with some really basic journalistic research that Saudi Arabia has one of the highest YouTube viewership per capita in the world. So we heavily promoted it there and in other Arabic-speaking countries on YouTube, where it performed brilliantly. Maybe most important is the long-term loyalty that we're trying to build. The tweets from this one video alone generated a 6% increase in the total number of followers to our Times video account.
Okay, so not all that long ago, it would not be normal to hear a video journalist like Adam talking about the numbers behind his project. And that's because numbers have been sort of toxic and sort of scary in some newsrooms. It's important that when you use numbers, you know how to use them, and you kind of know what you're going for with it. And the Times is very much moving in this direction. 88% referral traffic, it sounds great, but what does it mean? So when we talk about analytics at the Times, we're not just talking about page views. That's an important metric, but we're also talking about time spent on a story, whether people return to other articles, whether they share it, things like engagement. Answering these questions requires insights, not just numbers. And over the past year, we've added more analytics specialists to the newsroom. We've upgraded our tools, we've embedded data scientists with journalists, and we're in the process of greatly expanding access to this data. In the past few weeks, actually, our top editor, Dean Baquet, sent out a memo to the whole newsroom. And we'll just read part of it here. It says, "Our editorial judgment always, always comes first and prevails. Widening access to data is not about chasing clicks or keeping score on which article gets the best read or on deciding what to cover. There will be no traffic goals for desk or writers." But he pointed out that we've been flying blind in many parts of the organization about how readers are finding, reading, sharing, reacting to, and following up on our journalism. We're not going to fly blind anymore. Now, one of the things we heard a lot around the newsroom when we started talking about data with people was this fear that, oh, well, this means we'll just do cat videos. And in fact, one of the things people said the most was, will we stop covering Syria? You know, when you follow the data, will no one cover Syria? And so I'm a journalist and I decided to check out, well, what does the data say about Syria coverage? Took a look at it, and in fact, in the last 6 months of 2013, the New York Times saw more than 14 million page views of our coverage of the war in Syria. So there's no clickbait there. It's just serious journalism, and our readers like that kind of journalism. Data, it turns out, can tell a reassuring story about our audience. That data point really helped change the conversation in the newsroom about using data. When we wrote this report, we did not set out to make a roadmap about how to be innovative in the newsroom. What we wanted to do was change the culture. The Times needs to be the kind of place where we don't need an innovation committee 3 years from now to figure out what to do. We need continuous change, and we're very much moving in that direction. Being digital first, though, means that print is no longer the beginning of the conversation. In fact, just a couple days ago, there was another memo. We've had a lot of memos lately about changing what we call the page one meeting. So that meeting is traditionally where the editors talk about what goes on the front page. But now, they'll no longer be talking about page one. That'll happen off to the side. And from now on, they're simply talking about social, mobile, all kinds of things that you need to focus on in a digital world. This is really something that takes a mindset change. And we've made several structural changes in the past year that are helping with that. One thing that we did was we created a newsroom strategy team. We also have prioritized the hiring and promotion of digital talent. A big part of that is what Adam was talking about with the audience development team. In addition, we've worked to bring the newsroom closer to the business side. So once upon a time, as a newspaper editor, you only had to worry about this, the newspaper. But nowadays, there's so many different platforms for distributing our stories, and they're changing all the time. When you're the editor-in-chief, you're worrying about the front page. You're worrying, how can you make thoughtful, well-researched decisions about analytics, structured data, your archives, how to be in the app stores. Focusing not on questions of journalism, but on the support systems for journalism, like the content management of it, really need full-time expertise. They're not things that you can just bring up once a year at a conference in lovely Bergen. So that's why we've created a new strategy team reporting directly to the top editor. We also need to hire more digital makers, not just digital decision makers. And so we're recruiting people like coders and designers and data analysts and product managers with the same vigor that we've traditionally recruited writers and editors. The work they're doing is very much journalism, and it's critical to the work of reporters. They're creating content management systems, they're designing mobile apps, they're creating interactive graphics, they're building tools for reporters to dig into data sets. And on top of that, once you get the right people there, you've got to make sure they're talking to each other. So one thing that we found is that the wall inside the newsroom, you've long heard of the Chinese wall that separates the business side and the advertising side, is no longer in the right place in a lot of companies. That wall was there because of the advertising model. It used to be that the newsroom thought about stories, the business side sold ads, they never talked to each other, and let's not forget, this worked really, really well for a long time. But now it's not quite in the right place. Somewhat arbitrarily, a lot of things like technology and R&D and new digital products and analytics got put in the business side, at least at the Times and a lot of other organizations. But those things are things that actually have to do with readers, not advertising. Whether or not our app works is a very big reader concern. One of the examples that really helped me understand how important it was to get closer to some parts of the business side was the person behind the Times' recommendation engine. So there was this guy, and he spent all his day writing algorithms so that it would recommend what you should read. And this takes up pretty important real estate at the Times. It's on every single article page on the homepage, that box that says recommended for you. So I went to go see him and talked with him about how he made his decisions and what should go there and so on. And then I asked him, well, so do you talk to people in the newsroom? And basically, by and large, he said no, because he was on the business side and we wouldn't talk to him. But if you think about what he was doing, he was coming up with suggestions on what readers should read. I mean, that's very much something that the newsroom would have good insights on. And so it's those functions that we recommended the Times get closer on with the business side, and that's very much happening now in a very strategic way. The thing that these groups, design and technology and R&D, have in common is they're neutral. They're not for the advertisers, not for the readers. They're really just for getting the content out there. We have a joke in the newsroom that they're kind of like Switzerland. So when we started out back in 1851, the Times, had a much, much narrower audience. In fact, you probably couldn't get the New York Times in New Jersey, let alone the whole world. But now we're trying to reach people in the Arab world who don't even speak English. We're trying to reach a 17-year-old YouTube user. And we've got a lot of ideas, but no silver bullets. What we're doing is we're trying to change the culture. For us, one of the most exciting things in the past year has been within our organization, what other reporters are saying to us. They're saying, how can I help? Whereas in the past there had been, some indifference or even sometimes antagonism over change. We're moving on to really exciting questions now, ones that as a reporter really excite me. Things like, how do we do storytelling differently for digital? I want to close with a couple examples of things that we're changing in our journalism because of all this. One thing is a project that I worked on the past year of my life. It's an investigation into foreign money that's secretly going into U.S. real estate. It was a 5-day-in-a-row series, ran in February, called Towers of Secrecy, and it was about 25,000 words. We reported it out in more than 20 countries. So even though most writers really hope that readers are going to read every single word they write, we know they don't. And one of the things we wanted to focus heavily on was our mobile reader, who's on the go and really busy. And so several months before the project ran, we pulled together a team of people from design, from R&D, from our data insight group, from graphics, and focused on how could we do this a little bit differently for mobile. One of the things we came up with is a summary. We would do a summary, and in fact, our summary had bullet points. It also had these cards that you could scroll through really fast and see some of the people that we had found in some of these buildings. What it meant is that if you came in via mobile, you would look at this and you could decide from the bullet points which part of those long articles you wanted to go to. You weren't forced to read it in the order that we had given it to readers. It was a bit choose your own adventure. What this led to, in fact, was longer read times. It's sort of counterintuitive. And in fact, some people said, oh, well, if we give them a summary, maybe they won't read the whole thing. But actually, by respecting our readers' time, giving them the choice in how they wanted to enter, it led to people spending what was actually quite long read times for a long article within the stories. Another thing we did is we wanted to reach a global audience. And so we produced summaries in Chinese, in Malay, in Spanish, and in Russian. Those languages were based on the focuses of our different stories. And what was really great about it was when we went and put a tweet in Malay, it meant that they had something in Malay to land on. And then if they wanted, they could click and read the whole story in English. What was really cool about this marriage of the summary and the foreign language outreach all over the internet was that even before some of the stories came out, this project became front page news in places like Mexico and Malaysia because we put the summary up with day one and the stories weren't coming for a few days. And so there was this buzz in those countries about the fact that we had articles coming about major political figures there. I have to say, as a journalist, it's the kind of impact that you dream of. You know, it was in a foreign country among readers, some of whom didn't even speak English, and we were making news about things in their own backyards. I heard from many people all over the world. So since our committee wrapped up, another member on the committee has gone on to do something that's been really cool. He's worked on a new device called the Apple Watch. And just a few days after Apple introduced this watch, they gave our mobile team a challenge. They said, come up with news on the phone. Our mobile team knew it would not be enough just to plop headlines on there. So they brought together, again, this is a common theme, a multidisciplinary team. They brought together designers and coders and journalists to come up with something new. And what they came up with, we call one-sentence stories. These are short little stories designed to catch you up quickly. It turns out it's incredibly hard to do journalism on a 4-centimeter screen. You'd be surprised how hard our journalists worked on it, and we've been joking that we really hope that Arnold Schwarzenegger is never in the news again. But it was a hard project and incredibly rewarding because it forced us to really think about what matters to the user. You know, the watch is very personal. People are very busy. And so what we found worked is more informal language on the phone. And we've heard from a lot of readers things like, gee, you created an app that I didn't even know that I wanted. So it turns out maybe the future of journalism is predicting the future. Thanks so much, and we'd love to take your questions.
Obviously, there are no journalists in the audience. They might be asking questions.
Quiet group.
Wow.
Maybe it's a parking garage.
Yes, right here in the front.
Hi.
Hi.
I was wondering what you, working at the New York Times, what do you see that the report did for you? The fact that it leaked and that it got the attention that it got and that you're here today, what effects do you see for the New York Times as an organization?
You assume being here is a good thing?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. In a parking garage,
parking
right?
garage,
Yeah, it's great.
Just wait till
Yeah,
later.
thanks. I think when it was leaked, it sort of, a brick of accountability fell on the desks of leaders, and I think there was no hiding from it, and it sort of forced this conversation that may or may not have, come up to the surface. Just sort of put it right smack dead in the center of our newsroom, and it became the conversation for a time. Now that conversation has moved on to how to professionalize a lot of these changes. Yeah, I think that was our biggest gift.
There was another impact of it. When it first leaked, I don't know, I mean, how many of you all have looked at it? Okay, so a lot of you have looked at it. And, one thing some people worried when it came out is, it was very candid. We talked about the weaknesses that we found in the newsroom, and some people worried, oh, will that make it more difficult to recruit technological people when they see how we were behind on some things. But in fact, we've heard from people who are involved in recruiting that some of these people read the report and they liked how candid it was. They liked that the Times is soul searching, and they liked that the Times is determined to do something about it. So I think in the end, it excited people and caused more people to want to join in this time of transition.
Was there ever...
I have a question.
Let's
Cool.
Sorry,
let's start here in the front and then go to the back.
double date. Okay.
Okay, we're good?
Yes.
Yep.
Was there ever a discussion about publishing the report before it was leaked?
Yeah, we discussed it, but ultimately we wrote it for those six or so editors, and we didn't publish it.
I mean, ironically, we wrote a summary of the report, which was just a couple of pages or something,
3 pages.
that went out to the staff about a week before it was leaked, and that was a very watered down summary.
The reason why is it was put together. One of the things we decided is we were going to meet our deadlines of 6 months. So it just was not put together with the length of time that you might have put into it if you were going to publish it. And so, we considered it a private document. We put it out. We wanted. The industry's changing fast, so we just wanted to get it to our editors as opposed to slowing things down by, But I think ultimately it's viewed as being really helpful to actually the whole industry that it came out. Yeah.
Are you working on a new report that will be published by yourself?
There's not a new report that I know of. Adam and I have both. The committee was a temporary thing that we helped out on, but we both have gone back into our full-time roles of producing journalists. We're both, reporters. He's in primarily video, and I'm primarily in writing. And what's really happened is that pretty big teams of people at the Times are now just rolling forward with changes, and that's really exciting to watch.
Yeah, I think we mentioned, but it's important to repeat that, the idea is to never need an innovation report again. And what I mean by that is that we're focused now on building the support structures for our journalism. So building these systems where innovation can be nurtured on a full-time basis. So it's sort of like, putting this scaffolding around what we do every day, and that sort of, can support our daily grind of journalism. And once those systems are in place and built and fully professionalized, then there's no need for another innovation report, because that can support us as the industry evolves and for future changes. There was someone in the back that had a question?
Yeah. You told about this thing for Apple Watch, one sentence story. I think there is a word for that. Twitter?
Well, actually,
Twitter can be many sentences.
right.
Not
And the team that worked on it, they tried just dumping headlines in. That didn't work. They tried kind of using content for other things, and it does have to be slightly different. When you look at this example, this one's a full sentence, and I think you should look at anything that the Times is doing now on platforms like the Watch as still being experimental. So what we're doing now will very much change. But you're right, there's some similarities to Twitter, but they really thought it over for the Watch specifically, which I think is terrific.
Yeah, and it was interesting. I was talking to the team who worked on it, and they were saying that they had considered having the one-sentence story as something you can tap that will then bring you to the traditional orthodox longer story. But then there was some discussion that people probably wouldn't want to read a whole story on their Apple Watch. And a lot of the comments coming back were saying, I love this, it's great, I feel like I can get all caught up with 10 swipes, but it really annoys me that I can't tap in and read the longer story. I really want to read the longer stories. Now, the watch talks to your phone, as it does, right? I mean, right now it's primarily a supporting device for the phone. And you can save it on your watch, and then on your phone, you can call up the full story. But this is just, one of so many examples where, this is a massive experiment. The guys who the women and men who designed it had never seen the watch while they were designing it. So I'm very confident it'll look very different in a year from now. Yes.
Hi there. I'm wondering, it sort of relates to a previous question, but in an organization, a legacy institution like the New York Times, how do you affect innovation? Because, I'm at Mashable and we're sort of always born digital. Any kind of tips there's a lot of guys here from NRK and some of those other big institutions, of affecting innovation within the organization?
Well, so there's really a couple of phases on this, and for the past year, the newsroom has focused heavily on the first one and done a really good job, which is first you have to build the support systems. So I remember when the report leaked, actually, we went around the newsroom and we answered questions from all kinds of reporters because, in fact, when it leaked, that's when people across the Times saw it too, right? So, and all these reporters are saying, well, what can we do right now? And the problem was, and this is actually another reason that, it had been made for a smaller audience, was that we didn't have the support systems built yet, right? So, for instance, if it hadn't leaked, you might have had the report in, gotten all the support systems built, and then gone public, within the company. So the first phase is you have to make the tools and get the support systems and really good technical minds there to work with the journalist. And the second phase, which the Times is increasingly going in, and we've been able to do in our own work, is letting reporters be really involved. And, but you can't, before you even have many ways for them to look at data or many ways for them to work on designing better databases and stuff, you can't let them, they can't do it if they don't have the tools. So it's those two phases.
I think there are two competing schools of thought on how to innovate within. This has nothing to do with the media industry, but just on disruption in general. And one of them is to silo innovation and to remove it from the bureaucracy and hope that over time it can infect the core. And the competing school of thought is that, you do what USA Today did, which is you put a massive scoreboard right in front of the newsroom that everyone looks up at and sees metrics 24 hours a day, and the innovation is sort of like Big Brother, sort of forced upon you. And both of these strategies have worked in different industries, from steel to Kodak to IBM. And I think we're sort of a interesting example in that our innovation committee was siloed in the beginning, and then there's that pivotal moment when the leak happened, and then all of a sudden, it just started spilling into every far-flung corner of the company. So the FT started a new product called FT Fast, and it was just 5 or 6 reporters, but they were staffed 24 hours a day. I mean, rolling, and not slavery. And rolling hours and rolling shifts and just constantly updating it like a Twitter feed. And they were given a lot of authority and a lot of autonomy. And basically, I don't know how long it took, but I know that within a very short amount of time, that infected the core. And now the core FT report is produced a lot like that siloed experiment was set up.
We have a good example in the Times. The Times, actually, the answer is we do it both ways, the siloed and across. The great example of a siloed that has happened at the Times is we had this app, probably many of you all have seen it, we still have it, called NYT Now, which is a top news app. It was aimed at a younger audience, and it really experimented with a lot of things in mobile that were not in our main mobile app. And it came out well over a year ago. And then just in the last few months, we had a redesign of our main mobile app, and a lot of the things that had worked well in NYT Now migrated over. So that was in the silo. And then in terms of across the newsroom approach, that's what you see rolling out now when you see these support systems that have been built are really coming to fruition right now. And that's why there's all these memos from the top editor talking about how we'll work with them and how we'll use them.
Even this ISIS experiment that I shared with you, I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just sort of trying to figure it out like we all do every day. And now, you know, most of those learnings have become standard practice for any big project that we're proud of and that we think has a big global audience. So a lot of times these experiments fail, and every once in a while the learnings just become commonplace.
All right, we're just about out of time. Any more? One more there?
Hello. Yeah. Yes, it's more about the overall strategy. When they how do you see your income strategy? I mean, having a story on an Apple Watch, there is no room for advertising, and you say your brick wall has functioned, but do you in New York Times is the strategy turning towards subscription? Is that because the competition when it comes to advertising is so fierce? I guess in the US also.
Well, we didn't focus on advertising the Innovation Committee, but the Times executives have been very public about the fact that advertising is still very important. However, more than half of the company's revenues, we had a shift in the last couple years to more than half of the company's revenues coming from subscriptions. So this, what it's done, which is really in some ways a great thing, is really aligned a lot of the business side goals with the newsroom goals, which is focus on the reader, give them great stories they get addicted to, they want to come back to, and that's what's likely to make people subscribe and share our articles and get them to more people. So it's not one or the other. Advertising is important, but you know, the Times is very focused on readers and on subscribers.
And just two quick things to add. One, you can advertise on an Apple Watch because it was either The Guardian or CNN had a full page, massive full page ad. Just yesterday I saw it for the first time and was quite surprised. I have no idea if it made any money. And I think the strategy, I mean, the overall strategy is obviously, you know, not something that is in our domain on a daily basis, but, you know, we're nearing the 1 million digital subscription mark. And I think it's important to note what that number means, because if you look at the three biggest papers with digital subscriptions, we're number one, near 1 million, which I believe is the largest in the world for newspapers. The Wall Street Journal is number 2. I don't know their exact number, but they're behind us, but it's an impressive number. And number 3 is the Boston Globe with 60,000. So, you know, it's worked for us. It's not a template that can be a lesson or a model for papers around the world, but that is sort of the backbone of our strategy, and it's complemented by advertising. But those loyal sort of lifetime readers are the people that we're serving with journalism every day, and that's the core of the strategy.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.